She handed me a list of things I need to change to marry her. I wrote my own list with one item: find a new girlfriend. Then I walked out and let the silence do the rest. When I tell people this story now, they either laugh or shake their heads like I'm exaggerating. I almost wish I was. But I still remember the texture of that piece of paper, the way it looked under the dim light of the restaurant, the way she smiled as if she was giving me the roadmap to a happy life. We had been together for nearly 3 years at that point, long enough that our families knew each other, long enough that people started asking the inevitable question: "So, when are you two getting married?" I wasn't against the idea. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. She was sharp, ambitious, always the most magnetic person in the room. She could carry conversations with strangers and charm waitstaff into giving us free dessert. I admired her drive. She had this way of making every plan feel like a stepping stone to something bigger. But woven into all of that was an undercurrent I chose to ignore. She corrected me constantly, not maliciously, but casually, like she was fact-checking me in real time. If I mixed up the year a movie came out, she'd laugh and say, "You're so bad with details." It was 1994, not 95. If I told a story at a party and left out a small part, she'd interject, "No, no, let me tell it properly." It seemed harmless at first, but over time it chipped away at me. Then came the comparisons. "Why don't you dress more like Tom? He always looks put together. Ben makes twice what you do and he's younger. You should look into what he's doing." Always framed as advice, never as compliments. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she just wanted the best for me. Maybe this was her way of motivating me. There were smaller red flags too. She hated my old car, a beat-up Honda Civic I'd had since college. I loved that car. To me, it represented independence and years of scrappy memories. To her, it was embarrassing. She despised my college friends, especially when they came over to watch football. "They're all stuck in the past," she'd say. "Why do you waste your weekends with them?" She hated that I still played video games occasionally, dismissing it as immature. It was always the same pattern. Something about me wasn't enough. And if I changed just this one thing, maybe I would be. I kept swallowing it. I told myself relationships take compromise. Nobody is perfect. I tried harder, bought new clothes, cut back on time with my friends, forced myself into work events where I felt out of place. I thought if I met her halfway, eventually she'd stop seeing me as a project and start seeing me as a partner. Fast forward to that dinner. She had invited me to one of her favorite restaurants to talk about our future. I assumed it would be a conversation about timelines, families, finances. You know, the kind of practical but necessary talk couples have when they're considering marriage. I even remember feeling a little excited. I thought maybe this was her signaling that she was ready to take the next step. Instead, halfway through the appetizers, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded sheet of printer paper. She smoothed it out carefully and slid it across the table. At the top, bolded, underlined, typed in 12-point Times New Roman, were the words: "Things you need to change to marry me." It wasn't a joke. It wasn't some playful gimmick. It was a bulleted list, 20 items long. I scanned the first few. "Get rid of your old car. It's embarrassing when my friends see it. Stop spending time with your college friends. They're holding you back. Lose at least 20 pounds before we start looking at venues. Upgrade your wardrobe, especially suits and dress shirts. No more bargain brands. Consider a better career path. Your current salary won't support a family. Be more social at parties. Stop being so quiet. It makes me look bad. No more video games. They're childish and unattractive." It went on like that. Criticism disguised as requirements. I looked up at her. She was sipping her wine with a satisfied little smile, as though she had just handed me a helpful guidebook. "This way," she said, "you'll know exactly what I need from you before we can move forward. No misunderstandings." I swear, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. The woman across from me believed love was a performance review, that if I hit all 20 targets, then and only then, I'd be good enough to marry. For a brief moment, I felt a familiar temptation to defend myself, to argue, to ask her if she even loved me the way I was. But another part of me, a quieter, steadier part, finally spoke up. "You already know the answer." So instead, I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. "This is really helpful. Thank you." Her eyes lit up. She thought I was taking her seriously. She thought she'd won. I reached into my bag, pulled out the small notepad I usually carried for work, and tore out a sheet. Slowly, carefully, I wrote one line in big, deliberate letters. Find a new girlfriend. I folded the paper neatly, slid it back across the table, and stood up. She looked down, then back up at me, confused. Her lips parted like she was about to protest, but no sound came out. I placed my napkin on the table, pushed in my chair, and said, I guess that's my list. Then I walked out. The restaurant was full. People noticed. Some glanced at us curiously, others whispered. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking with my shoulders straight, not hunched over trying to prove myself. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the parking lot. Text after text. What the hell was that? Are you kidding me right now? You're throwing away 3 years over a list? Come back and talk to me. By the time I got home, there were voicemails too. Her voice breaking, furious 1 second, pleading the next. I didn't answer. Not that night, not the next day. The funny thing? I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like I had lost something. I felt like I had finally set down a weight I'd been carrying for years. The days after the restaurant breakup were strangely quiet, at least on my end. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't walking on eggshells, wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes to see if I had missed a call or a text. But for her, it was chaos. At first, she tried anger. I got paragraphs of texts tearing me apart. You're overreacting. It was just a list. Everyone has expectations. You'll never find someone as ambitious as me. Good luck settling for average. Running away from growth is the most immature thing you could have done. I didn't respond. When she realized silence was all she was getting, her tone shifted. The next wave of messages came with apologies. I was just trying to help you be the best version of yourself. I didn't mean it to sound harsh. I love you. I just wanted us to have the perfect future. Can we talk? Please, don't throw away what we had. I still didn't respond. That's when she escalated to involving others. Mutual friends started reaching out, some confused, some already biased in her favor. One of her closest girlfriends texted me. She's devastated. You blindsided her. Couldn't you have handled it privately? Another mutual friend, who had been there the night of the restaurant scene, actually called me. He lowered his voice like he was afraid of being overheard. Man, I don't blame you. That list. She showed us a draft weeks ago. We told her it was a bad idea, but she said you needed direction. Honestly, I think she thought she was doing you a favor. That one hit me harder than I expected. So she had workshopped this with her friends. She had practiced this list. It wasn't a one-off mistake. It was deliberate. Meanwhile, my own friends, especially the ones she always called immature, rallied around me. Bro, one of them said, you dodged a bullet the size of a train. Imagine being married to that. Every month would have been a new checklist. The longer the silence stretched, the more desperate she became. One night, I got a knock on my door. It was nearly midnight, and there she was, mascara smudged, holding that same folded sheet of paper from the restaurant. She shoved it at me, her hands trembling. Look, she said, I crossed out half the list. I'll change. Just talk to me. I remember standing there, holding the paper she pushed into my chest, and feeling an odd kind of sadness. Not for me, but for her. Because she still didn't understand. It wasn't about crossing things off. It wasn't about negotiating terms. It was about the fact that she had reduced love to a spreadsheet of improvements. I'm not interested, I said gently, handing the paper back. This isn't what a relationship should be. She broke down on my doorstep. I let her cry for a while, but I didn't invite her in. Eventually, she stormed off, muttering that I was cold, unfeeling, ungrateful. The next morning, I saw her post on Instagram. A picture of her at brunch with the caption, Strong women don't cry over weak men nail polished. The comments section was full of her friends hyping her up, telling her she deserved better, that she was glowing. But I knew, and she knew, that the night before, she had been in pieces on my front porch. That was the pattern for weeks. Online, she was bold, independent, thriving. Offline, she was texting me late at night, leaving voicemails about how she missed me, how she was willing to compromise. I stayed quiet. And here's the part one didn't expect. Silence turned out to be my sharpest weapon. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't performing. I wasn't trying to defend myself, justify my choices, or live up to someone else's impossible standard. I let the silence do the talking. It spread. Mutual friends stopped pushing me to reconcile because they saw I wasn't budging. Even her parents. who had always liked me, reached out once. Her mom called to say, "She's going through a lot right now. But I just want you to know, we never thought you weren't good enough. We always thought you were steady, kind." I thanked her, but I didn't ask for updates. I didn't want to know. The final turning point came a month later. A buddy of mine sent me a screenshot of her new dating app profile. The bio read, "Looking for a man who knows how to level up. If you can't handle being pushed to be your best, don't swipe right." I laughed. Not bitterly, not angrily, just laughed. Because it was proof that she hadn't changed. She still believed love was about pushing, correcting, molding. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. Update 1.it had been about 6 weeks since the night in the restaurant. By that point, I'd settled into a routine that felt lighter. No more constant self-monitoring. No more weighing every word. No more prepping myself for constructive criticism that always came wrapped in a sigh or an eye roll. I thought maybe she'd finally accepted it. I was wrong. It started with small things. A mutual friend texted me out of nowhere. "Hey," she asked if I'd casually mention you at our hangout. Said she wants to know how you're doing. I told him, "Please don't. I'm good. I don't want her updates." He respected that. A few days later, another friend told me she had shown up at a group dinner where she knew I might be, acting as if nothing had happened. When she realized I wasn't there, apparently she spent the evening drinking too much wine and muttering about how I'd embarrassed her. Then came the bold move. I was at work, an office where professionalism mattered. My phone buzzed. Reception was calling to say someone was in the lobby asking for me. When I walked down, it was her. Standing there, holding a gift bag, smiling too brightly. "Hey," she said, like we were still together. "I thought I'd surprise you." I glanced at the bag. Inside was a framed picture of us from a vacation 2 years ago. On the frame she had written in silver marker, "Don't forget how good we are together." The receptionist was staring. My coworkers walked past, raising their eyebrows. My stomach sank, not out of longing, but out of embarrassment. She was trying to stage a reconciliation scene, like something out of a rom-com. I took the bag, handed it back. "This isn't appropriate. Please don't come here again." Her smile cracked instantly. Her voice rose. "You can't just erase me. 3 years, and you act like I'm nothing." I kept my voice low, steady. "You're not nothing. But we're done. Please respect that." She stormed out, the bag clutched to her chest. The receptionist gave me a wide-eyed look. "Ex-girlfriend?" she asked gently. I nodded. "Yeah, ex." That night, my voicemail had 3 new messages. The first was angry. "You humiliated me in front of strangers." The second was pleading. "I miss you. I can change. Please don't throw this away." The third was almost chilling in its calmness. "Fine. If you want silence, you'll get silence. Don't come back to me when you realize what you lost." But here's the thing. I didn't feel like I was losing anything. I talked it over with one of my closest friends, a guy who had seen me through every stage of that relationship. He said something that stuck with me. "She thinks love is a project. She doesn't get that you're not a project, you're a person. And people don't need fixing to be loved." Exactly. That was it. That was the entire fracture between us, laid bare. A week later, mutual friends threw a small get-together. I showed up, half expecting her to be there. She wasn't. But the topic came up anyway. Someone asked quietly, "Are you ever going to talk to her again? She's been different." Not herself. I shook my head. I don't wish her harm. But I don't want her in my life. She's shown me exactly how she sees me. And I don't want to live like that. The friend nodded slowly. Then he said, "Honestly, she told us once that you were her safe bet. That no matter what happened, you'd always be there. I think that's why this is hitting her so hard. She never thought you'd actually walk away." That stunned me for a second. Safe bet. Plan B. The fallback guy. Suddenly it all clicked. The condescension, the list, the way she assumed she could mold me into whatever shape she wanted. She thought I'd endure anything because I was steady. But steadiness doesn't mean weakness. That night, I realized I had already moved on emotionally. I wasn't angry anymore, just resolute. And oddly grateful. Because if she hadn't handed me that list, maybe I'd still be in that relationship, slowly eroding under the weight of her expectations. The final straw came 2 weeks later, when a different mutual friend pulled me aside at the gym. "She's been asking me to talk to you. Said she wants just one conversation." I told him, "Please tell her no. I don't want to be cruel, but the kindest thing I can do now is keep the boundary firm." He nodded. "I'll tell her." For what it's worth, man, you're handling this better than anyone I know would. That was the last time I heard of her trying directly. By then, I had started new routines, joining a cooking class, planning a hiking trip, even just reconnecting with old friends without having to justify my every choice. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't under review, and the silence that had once been heavy now felt like peace. Final update that it's been about 3 months since the night she handed me that list across the restaurant table. 3 months of silence, of firm boundaries, of deciding, every single day, not to go back to a version of myself that tolerated being evaluated instead of loved. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But people talk. Mutual circles, family friends, even coworkers who once knew her. They all brought bits and pieces of updates whether I asked for them or not. The most common theme? She didn't take it well. At first, she spun the breakup her way. I heard she told her friends I was insecure and afraid of commitment. She framed the list as a sweet gesture that I misinterpreted. Online, she curated her image carefully, posting selfies with captions like, focusing on me 2 hearts, hashtag self-growth, hashtag strong woman. To the casual observer, it looked like she was thriving. But behind the curated feed, cracks were showing. A mutual friend told me she had started venting at parties, saying things like, he'll regret it when he realizes no one else will put up with his laziness. Another said she had gone on a few dates, but kept complaining that none of the guys were serious enough. One of them even messaged her friend after a date, saying, she spent half the dinner talking about her ex honestly. She seemed more interested in proving a point than in getting to know me. Meanwhile, my life felt lighter. I wasn't lonely, though people assumed I might be. I filled my time with small, steady things, joining that cooking class I'd been eyeing, hiking with buddies on weekends, calling my parents more often. I even started writing again, something I'd stopped because she used to say, it's cute, but you'll never make money from it. Shouldn't you focus on something productive? Without realizing it, I had internalized her voice as my inner critic. Removing her meant removing that constant stream of shoulds. And in the quiet, I could actually hear my own voice again. The biggest test of my resolve came unexpectedly. About 6 weeks after our breakup, I got a text late one night. I know you don't want to hear from me, but please can we talk? Just once. I'll meet wherever you want. I just need closure. I sat with the message for a long time. A part of me, the old part, the part conditioned to soothe and manage, almost wanted to say yes. But I knew what that conversation would be, an attempt to reframe, to shift blame, to negotiate terms. So I didn't reply. The next morning, another message came through. I guess that's my closure then. Goodbye. And that really was it. She disappeared from my orbit after that. No more texts. No more updates through friends. Even the Instagram posts stopped being cryptic references to new chapters and went back to generic brunch photos. I think she realized eventually that silence meant I wasn't coming back. The irony is, the silence gave me more closure than any conversation could have. I still remember sitting at that restaurant table, her sliding that neatly folded paper across to me. The seriousness in her eyes as she explained how this list would help us get ready for marriage. The way she expected me to nod, to thank her, to treat it as an act of love. And I still remember the clarity I felt when I handed her my one-item list in return. Find a new girlfriend. That was the moment I understood something I'd ignored for years. Love that comes with conditions, checklists, and ultimatums isn't love at all. It's control dressed up as care. Friends asked me later if I regretted ending it so abruptly. You didn't even give her a chance to talk it through, one said. But here's the truth. She had 3 years of chances. 3 years of sighs, critiques, veiled suggestions, and subtle digs at who I was. That list wasn't a one-time mistake. It was the culmination of who she saw me as, a project, not a partner. And me walking away wasn't abrupt, it was long overdue. Do I hate her? No. I don't even resent her anymore. I actually hope she figures herself out, because deep down, I don't think she was malicious. I think she was scared, scared of imperfection, scared of vulnerability, scared of not controlling the outcome. The list was her way of managing fear. But in trying to control everything, she strangled the very thing she wanted, connection. As for me, I've changed more in these 3 months than I did in the last 3 years. I've stopped apologizing for existing as I am. I've stopped seeing myself through someone else's filter. And I've learned that sometimes the strongest statement you can make isn't a speech or a fight, or a grand gesture. It's walking away quietly and letting your absence speak louder than your presence ever could. The fallout? Legendary in its own way, yes. Friends were stunned, she was shaken, and the story of the list made the rounds in our circle. Some people laughed, some shook their heads. But the real legend, for me, isn't about public drama. It's about reclaiming my life. I was never Plan B. I was never a project. I was and am a person. And finally, I chose myself.